Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga show, the Thursday predictions edition. And as you can see, I'm back with Peter, obviously fresh from his trip to Copenhagen as well. How did that treat you, Peter?
Well, I had to come back early to beat the Bundesbahn strike. Something that's something that we Germans are not happy about these days. That we have rail strikes, air strikes. That is not the Bundesrepublik that I grew up in. But we remain proud of our country and our Bundesliga, and it's a pleasure to talk about it with you, as always.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, pretty tough couple of days with the strike on the Bundesbahn as well. Yeah, I think it's just today and tomorrow, but still, it's 2 days too long as far as I'm concerned. And obviously for Bundesliga fans as well, won't be particularly happy with it if they're hoping to get to grounds over the weekend and things. But yeah, obviously match week 25, isn't it? Obviously, it's really hotting up. We're into the 10-game countdown now for the season, aren't we? Obviously, only 10 games remaining. You know, Leverkusen 10 points clear at the top. Oh, they did have a very close scare tonight to losing that 34-match unbeaten run before Patrick Schick's last gasp equaliser saved them with a 2-2 draw in Harabach, I believe you pronounce it. Yeah, but it was would have been a bit of a kind of disappointment should they have lost that game, but yeah, they got away with a 2-2 draw there. So yeah, let's get straight into it. I mean, we've got the Friday evening game, which is quite an interesting match between Stuttgart and Union Berlin. Like basically, these two teams have switched sides this season, haven't they? Like this time last year, this would have been Stuttgart fighting near the bottom and Union Berlin going for the Champions League spot. But this year, obviously, a year can change a lot in football. But yeah, I mean, obviously, this is going to be, most people will have this down as a home banker. I think, Union Berlin just aren't scoring goals at all, are they really? They've got similar issues to the likes of Mainz and Köln down at the bottom. This Hollebach-Folland strike partnership isn't really producing too much, let's be honest. Defensively, they look a little bit more solid. I think Kevin Vogt has been a good addition to that defense. He's done quite well for me. We're starting to see the likes of Later regaining his form. But for me, this has got to be a home banker, really. I just think Stuttgart are cantering to this Champions League spot. And we've all been waiting for them to fall away, but it's just not happened, has it? And there's just so many good players. Guirassy getting a double last week. Obviously, there's a little bit of speculation as to whether Undav will start this game. But I still think with or without him, I can still see a home win in this game. I'm not sure it'll be a hammering, but I'd go for a 2-0 home win. Peter?
We sync up exactly. I believe that both Undav and Anton are questionable due to injury, but that shouldn't really affect matters all that much. The way you described Union is fair. They are stabilizing under Nenad Bielka, a coach who we both question the appointment of, obviously, but he's gaining some respect in German footballing circles now that he's back from his suspension and no longer slapping players. Union are a stable team, but it's unlikely that they will be able to furnish much excitement. I think it's going to be a 2-0 win for Stuttgart. Highly recommend people tune into that match to see the wonderful Cannstatter atmosphere on a Friday night. And perhaps Jamie Leveling scores against his parent club. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it would. Hello to Erin as well, checking in from Philly. Yeah, Philly's biggest Bundesliga fan. Wow, yeah, that's a big claim there, Erin. But yeah, Moritz as well, obviously our FC Köln diehard as well. On the bright side, at least the trains will be on time. Yeah, that's true. But that's the other big question in Germany as well. Will the trains be on time? Yeah. Good, fantastic. So yeah, Ballum, you're wanted as well. Ballum, you got to check in with us. Yeah, we miss you, our old friend. So yeah, let's have a look. Moving on to the Saturday games. I mean, this is another one that very few will be tipping the away side here. Bayern Munich against Mainz 05. I mean, what can you say? Bayern, for me, their entire season was on the line in the game against Lazio, and they actually produced a really good performance, I felt. It was a confident performance, and, they fully deserved the comfortable win. Kane was back on form. I felt as though there were a lot of big performances in there from the Bayern team. So, the season's not over now. They're into the quarterfinals of the Champions League. They've got something to look forward to with the draw next Friday. So you never know. This might kind of give them a little kick up the proverbial backside to try and pick up a few more results in the Bundesliga as well. Obviously, they're on a run of only 1 win in 4, which is the equivalent of disaster by Bayern Munich standards. And most people considered last week's 2-2 draw with Freiburg to be the final nail in the coffin, really, to their Bundesliga title aspirations. But for me, I can't see them not claiming an easy home win here, in truth. I just think Mainz have improved. They have improved under Bo Henriksen, but they still don't score goals. That's the issue. And it's been incredibly 14 games since they scored more than 1 goal in a match. You've got to go all the way back to Jan Siebert's first game in a 2-0 win over Leipzig, the last time they scored more than 1 goal in a match. So that's basically sums up their issues. So I am going to go for a big home win here. We've not tipped a big home Bayern win for a while, or at least I haven't. But I'm going to go for a 4-0 home win here. I just think they'll bounce back in style in this game. What do you think, Peter?
I agree. I will give Mainz the benefit of the doubt and give them 1 goal and tip a 4-1 win for the German record champions. It's amazing that Tuchel was able to pull himself back from the brink with that win over Lazio. The entire season, as you pointed out, came down to it. And now it should be smooth sailing for Bayern. They're not going to win the title, obviously, but they should be able to finish the season strongly in second place. And some very, very interesting tactical stuff going on there with Leon Goretzka now playing the libero, and Joshua Kimmich and Rafael Guerrero moving into midfield and sort of a 3-5-2 or 3-4-1-2 hybrid. It's very, very interesting stuff. So, yes, Bayern are going to be just fine. Mainz are putting their entire fortunes on Tom Kraus in this one, who has to fill in for the suspended Leandro Barrera, and I just have a feeling that's not going to work very well.
The former Nürnberger as well. We all know what happens to Nürnbergers when they get into the Bundesliga. But anyway, and moving on to the next game, another game that looks like a home banker, really, doesn't it? There's a lot of games for the coupons this weekend down there. I think a lot of people are going to be going for the Bayern-Leipzig double in this one. I mean, what can you say? Leipzig, probably the unluckiest team in history to go out in that Champions League tie. I thought they were brilliant in both matches, but they basically ended up getting the Mainz no Fünf curse, that they just couldn't score goals. Basically, they created so many chances in those 2 ties. And, they were the better side in both matches. And, they've been getting a lot of accolades from all over Europe for the way they were able to play against the record Champions League champions. But, I mean, ultimately they still lost. But, Marco Rosa is slowly building his way back up in the team. I thought the likes of Schlager was amazing in the game. Javi Simmons and Dani Olmo are back on top form at the minute. And to be honest, Darmstadt are going to be quaking in the boots, really. For this one. I mean, after that debacle last week, which is widely considered to be the worst Bundesliga performance, probably in living memory, really. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. Obviously, I was happy to see it, kind of because of my boys, Augsburg, picking up a big away win. But still, I mean, Darmstadt were bad in that first half. They really were. And to be honest, if Leipzig field a full team, which I think they will, obviously there'll be tired legs after Wednesday night's match, but it's very hard to see not a similar scoreline being repeated to the Augsburg game, in truth. I'm not going to go for it being quite as bad, but I'm going to go for a 5-0 whacking in this game.
Wow.
Peter. Sorry, Darmstadt, but...
Yeah, I don't know where. I mean, Darmstadt really need to find some solutions here, and it doesn't involve Yannick Müller or Klaus Giasula. They still have injury problems. Their daughter is still out. Melem suffered that injury setback. Nürnberger, your former boy Fabian Nürnberger, is not available either. I'll say 3-0. I will say that Leipzig will conserve some energy. We might see Christoph Baumgartner play at striker again, which I wasn't entirely convinced of. I think that he'll rotate back in the 4-2-2-2. So I'm going to go 3-0. If it's a 5-0 whacking, I mean, now what happened? Now the ultras are going to invade the pitch and give the Darmstadt team another berating. the
I
traveling.
mean, you've got to question the future of Leverkusen. I think the next two games, to be honest, against Leipzig and Bayern, are going to really test the board's resolve on Leverkusen. Obviously, he did the miracle getting them promoted, but yeah, I mean, some of the performances haven't been good enough, and they've never really looked like a Bundesliga side in maybe 3 or 4 games over the season, but it's not enough for a whole season's of work, is it? And, I think if they get heavy beatings against, obviously they've got Leipzig this weekend and then Bayern next weekend, we could see potentially him being let go, I think. But I hope he doesn't, because he's a good guy, but, it's been a rough season pretty much for them. Anyway, moving on. So it's the derby, isn't it? One of the oldest, most traditional derbies. Many consider this to be the biggest derby in Germany, actually, Gladbach against Köln. This is a real old school derby. Both of these sides fought for titles in the past, but this particular season, they're fighting to stay in the Bundesliga, aren't they? So, I mean, for Gladbach, it's, I wouldn't really say they're really that much in the race to go down. They're 9 points clear of Köln. I think if they avoid defeat in this game, they're not going to be in any trouble to go down. Only a defeat here would bring them back into the race, really. But, Gladbach, I thought last week they were a little bit underwhelming at times, to be honest. I think they had a chance to go and make it back-to-back wins after that brilliant performance against Bochum in the last home game. But, they didn't really create that many chances, and obviously they got that draw against Mainz. As for Köln, I thought they fought well, really, against Leverkusen, and I mean, the fact that they played, 76 minutes with 10 men, obviously Jan Thielmann getting that red card, and he's going to be suspended for this game. Yeah, it's a very hard one to predict, this, unlike the previous 3 matches. I just feel as though Gladbach, they continue to flatter to deceive a little bit for me. And I think they've got good players in the side. I like the fact that Neuhaus is back in the side. I would like to see Rocco Reitz get back on the starting lineup, because I do like him and I think he's a really promising youngster. And there is still potential in that squad, but Robin Hack hasn't really built on that doppelpack that he got against Stuttgart on the first game of the Rückrunde. I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw here. I just think Köln are going to keep fighting. And, as they say in England, you never know who's going to win on Derby Day. Like, form book goes out of the window, basically. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw here, in contrast to the previous 3 predictions. What do you think, Peter?
We sync up exactly, and Moritz absolutely read my mind here and said that because I wanted to mention Davy Selke. Davy Selke is going to be available off the bench. One of our favorite players on the pod is returning. Well, with Thielmann's absence, they don't have a striker, but Thielmann's not a striker to begin with. So Ademayan actually looked halfway decent last week. I can't believe those words came out of my mouth, and I this was not bad off the bench either. Yeah, I have a bad feeling that it's going to be a 1-1 draw. It's going to be a very, very hard-fought game, because both teams know that this might be their last top-flight meeting of this fantastic derby for a while, and we're certainly going to miss it in the event that Köln get relegated, because we're not having a Großes Revier derby next season, not with Schalke in the state that they are. We're hoping for the big Hamburg derby in the top flight. We can perhaps hope to get that. But yeah, I recommend that a lot of people tune into this match for the atmosphere, and it'll be a physically intense duel. But I will also tip a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, and then moving on to the Bavarian Schwabians, Augsburg versus pretty much Bavarian Schwabians, Heidenheim as well. But they're on the other side, I believe. They're the Schwabian Bavarians, maybe you can call them. But yeah, obviously there's not very much at all. The distance actually between these clubs is not far at all. I think it's less than 50, 60 kilometers, actually. I think, Peter, when we went down to Augsburg, we actually went past Heidenheim very close, actually, on the road. So this is a derby, although it's not really considered to be a derby as such. I don't think there's much rivalry between the teams. Or if these two teams stay in the Bundesliga for years to come, maybe it is the kind of derby that could grow in the future, But obviously, the previous meeting between these sides was a crazy game, wasn't it? It was actually Torup's first game, and Heidenheim flew out of the blocks into a 2-0 lead before Augsburg smashed them 5-2, which was a pretty crazy match. I'm not sure we'll get such a crazy match this time. in truth. Although, Augsburg are amongst the goals at the minute. I mean, what can you say about that man, Demirovic? I mean, he's been one of the players of the season, 14 goals and 8 assists. The guy is just a machine. He really is. And, there's a lot of other players that are playing well too. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Kevin Mbabu as well. I think he's been fantastic. Even the likes of Iago is playing well at the minute, and that's saying a lot, really. But the whole team is purring at the minute, and they look a good side. Jensen has played well last week too. As for Heidenheim, they're still playing pretty well, but obviously Kevin Muller made an absolute howler last week. I kind of warned people about him that I wasn't overly convinced, but that was his first major error in a while. Yeah, Moritz has mentioned that Ruben Vargas has been playing well too. He really has. He's been very good. Back to the form of probably 2 years ago, I would say. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually going to tip a home win here. I just think Augsburg are a very strong home outfit, and I just feel as though they're playing really, really well under Jens Torup in general. I think it'll be tight, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 home win. Peter?
Well, I'm very glad that you brought up the reverse fixture, because that was one of my favorite matches of the season, and I still have high hopes that we can get a lot of goals here. Very interesting stuff from Heidenheim last week in a game that they absolutely could have won against Eintracht Frankfurt, in which Frank Schmidt tactically compensated for the loss of his 2 best players, Leonard Maloney and Jan-Niklas Besta, and they still played a rather good game. And Müller's howler was, had a little bit to do with the divots on the pitch. That was sort of an accidental thing. So I'm going to say that we're going to get some great goals out of this one. And it's going to be a really fun match. And I'm going to go, believe it or not, for a 4-3 Augsburg victory.
Wow. I agree. This is going to be a fun match. I think both of these two teams are entertainers this year. Yeah. And I think both teams can kind of relax as well, because I think both are pretty much mid-table. So we might see some entertainment in this one. Then, onto the top spiel, Saturday night top spiel, and it's Werder Bremen against Borussia Dortmund. And this is actually going to be my first shock tip of the weekend, actually. I think that Werder, they've not been as good in the last 2 games, but I think under the lights, in the top spiel against Dortmund. I remember last year they had some unbelievable top spiels. I remember they beat Gladbach, was it 5 or 6-1 in the same, in the top spiel on the Saturday evening. And I just feel as though Dortmund is still flattering to deceive a little bit, if I'm being honest. I didn't think they were that good last week against Union, although it was still a good win. It's always a big win when you win in the Alta Försterei. But for me, Bremen are a better side than Union. And I think they've not been as good the last 2 weeks, but I think they'll bounce back with a performance here, And I'm going to go for a 2-1 home win in the top spiel. The first big shock of the weekend. Peter?
We have our first disagreement. I have a feeling this is not going to be all that entertaining of a match. It's not going to be an Augenschmaus very much. Dortmund are playing well enough to win. Bremen, for me, are simply far too inconsistent and have been for the last 5 weeks. I don't really see a player that's in good form and has emerged as a playmaker. For that matter, I mean, Njinma and Dux have been in and out of form, as has been the case with Weiser and Agu and Linen and all of this stuff. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 Dortmund win, which was also the result of the Hinrunde fixture, which was Friday night under the lights there in Dortmund. So much to the chagrin, much to the frustration of Dortmund fans, it looks to be the case that Dortmund is going to win ugly and narrowly again. And they're not going to be happy with that, but that's the way I see this one shaking out.
Yeah, it's obviously a big game ahead of next week's Champions League last 16. That also filtered into my decision a little bit too, because we've seen, teams resting players. But I think in the top spiel, most teams feel the full 11, because it's the whole country's watching it and things. So moving on to the Sunday early afternoon game, Bochum Freiburg. Yeah, I mean, this has become a relatively important game for Bochum, because they have been pretty much mauled in the last 2 games. Really, obviously 5-2 against Gladbach and then 4-1 against Leipzig last week. Obviously, building on that 3-2 win against Bayern, which was a famous result for them, really. But to be honest, performance-wise, I don't think it's been bad. I just think they've missed Riemann in the last game. I think Luther, he was in FC Köln earlier in the season. How did he end up in Bochum? He must be about 45, really. So
Yeah.
that was a big shock to see him on the team lineup last week, to be honest. And while he did well in the first half, he kind of fell apart in the second half, really. I mean, so that's going to be a big thing, really. I mean, Luther struggled for me overall, really, last week, and I'm not convinced, really, he's Bundesliga standard anymore. Obviously, the former Union man. But basically, in general, Bochum are looking pretty good still, I feel. I mean, Osterhager missed last week, which was disappointing because he's a key player for them in midfield. But, you know, Asano has been decent recently. Beiro looks pretty good. And even Vitek got on the scoreline last week. There were a lot of players missing, key players for Bochum last week. That was probably one of the reasons why they fell apart in that second half. So they're going to need at least 2 or 3 of them to come back this week. But all said and done, Freiburg struggle in general after Thursday night Europa League matches. And by the way, they will be underway now against West Ham. And there's not much of a turnaround at all between that late kickoff on the Thursday and then the Sunday game. It's barely any time, really. And, you know, Bochum are a strong home side. So I'm actually going to go there for them to nick it in this game. I think it's going to be a 1-0 narrow, important win for the home side.
That is my tip exactly. I think that the turnaround is a huge factor, and Freiburg are really, really poor on turnarounds. It's just, I mean, look, we have to be honest that they don't really have the quality in the side this year. And I mean, look, it's fabulous to see Christian Günther back. It's great that Matthias Ginter is also available once again. And as we saw last week, you know, that sort of a hold-up tandem. Lucas Höhle and Michael Gregoric, they can combine well, particularly on well-designed set pieces. But yeah, that's an excellent tip. That's the proper tip. That's the proper scoreline. You know, unfortunately, I and I've said this before. I mean, I really think that Christian Streich, much depends on how far they advance in the Europa League. But I think, you know, we're trying so hard. Our interviewers, including your boy Archie Rentut, was interviewing him just last week, trying to you know, figure out whether or not he's still up for it after all of these years and all of these rebuilding projects and everything. And Streich, I think, he's probably considering taking a sabbatical, as much as he's a part of that club and as much as he loves that team. I think these turnarounds and these rebuilding jobs are getting at him, and so I think he files for sabbatical, joins Klopp on the sidelines, and I would love to see either Klopp or Streich as the next Bundes trainer. But that's an excellent tip. That's a correct tip. 1-0, I think, is what it's going to happen.
Yeah. By the way, the score is currently 0-0 between Freiburg and West Ham. So, as you say, Peter, it's massive that they can try and get through that tie and then keep him excited, because this season he has looked a little bit below par at times. Like, he's not looked motivated, and it's understandable because he's been there over 10 years, I believe now. And obviously,
15, yeah.
15 easily, yeah. So
yeah.
It's a long time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, moving on to the next game, Frankfurt Hoffenheim. Now this is a game that looks pretty interesting because both of these two teams have been scoring goals by the bucket load in recent weeks, and I think this is a game that, while it is important, there's not too much pressure on either side. So I think both teams will go out to try and win this game. In truth, you know, I mean, a few weeks ago, Peter, we were saying that Pellegrino Matarazzo was on the verge of being out, but they put in 2 really good performances the last 2 weeks, particularly the one at Dortmund. I felt, yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, but Hoffenheim are a funny side, really. They're a funny club and they're a funny side, in truth, because like you just don't know what they're going to deliver. But at the minute they're running hot, and generally when they run hot, they score goals. Hoffenheim. So, and especially away from home, they've got one of the best away records in the Bundesliga this year. So I think we will see goals. I mean, Bayer, I still think he could get on that plane, you know, in summer. I believe a very strong finish. I actually tipped him to go earlier in the season because I was so impressed. And he had a kind of off period around December, January, but he's struck back well and truly in the last few weeks with 2 braces, back-to-back braces. And I'm going to go for this to be an entertaining game, but actually I'm going to go for an away win here. I'm going to go for a 3-2 away win. What do you think, Peter?
I agree with you. I think Hoffenheim, excuse me, are running hot, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that Matarazzo has pulled his best tactics out of the team. and has brought the best out of Bayer, who is now playing on the left wing. That could be his ticket to the Euros, because as a matter of fact, I mean, he's a good striker, but one of the reasons that they didn't feel like he was ready for the senior men's national team was because he's not a classic target number 9. He's very tall, he's very lanky, but he's not strong in the way that Germans like a sort of a more bulked out physical number 9 who can also work deep drops. So, but if he can work the half spaces on the left, much in the way that Leroy Sané can in a 4-2-2-2, he might get a call up and a trial under Nagelsmann during the coming international break. As you pointed out, back-to-back braces. I think Hoffenheim are the better team. I think Topmöller has continued to fail tactically and bring out the best in the squad. I think, along with somebody who we're going to discuss in a moment, Niko Kovac, he's pretty much a lame duck. So we have at least 3 of those in the Bundesliga this year, with Tuchel, Kovac, and Topmöller probably set to be released on the last day of the season. Yeah, that's an excellent tip. I'm going to go with a lower score line, though, 2-1 Hoffenheim.
Yeah, and then the final game of the weekend, 7:30 German time kickoff between Leverkusen and Wolfsburg. I mean, yeah, this is a game that, again, it looks like a banker, but the thing with Leverkusen, I've got a feeling that they're going to have a duff performance in there, and they will get turned over in the coming weeks. I don't think they'll go unbeaten the whole league season. I think the last 2 games, they've not been at the best, but they've done enough to win, and that's important in a run-in, because I think I mentioned it on Monday. This is not going to be a cakewalk getting over the line for Leverkusen. They've never won the Bundesliga title before. There's a lot of pressure. A lot of people in Germany and Europe are basically saying it's over. So that puts a kind of pressure on in its own way, because everyone's saying it's done and dusted. What can you say? I think obviously tonight's game was a bit of a concern for long periods, going 2-0 down against a side that most people thought they'd roll over. But you have to remember there were a lot of rotations in there as well. The likes of, Lozek started, Iglesias, who's not really impressed anyone in truth. They all started, and Kovar started in there. So the likes of Xhaka, Wirtz were brought on towards the end, but they've only done, 25 minutes on the pitch tonight. So they will be relatively fresh, even though it's a long trip over there to Azerbaijan. I would imagine it's like a 3.5-4 hour flight over there for that game. So you've got to bear that in mind. Again, the turnover. But they have had a bit more time than Freiburg, because they had the early kickoff today, then they've got the late kickoff on Sunday. So, every hour counts in this. And I just don't see much still in this Wolfsburg side that could really challenge them, in truth. I mean, Kovac is definitely a sitting duck. If he's not, then there's something clearly wrong in that club, because, I mean, I would imagine the only reason he's still there is because they don't want to pay an extra few months compensation, and they want to spend more time, getting a better manager in rather than just a Kohlfeldt, which obviously they got a couple of years ago. But I'm still going to go for a comfortable but not like very heavy home win. I'm going to go for a 2-0 to the home side. What do you think, Peter?
I'll go 3-0. I think that Xabi really prioritizes his league 3-4-3, and that's the reason for the rotations that you were just referring to. So he wants to go undefeated in the league this season, and I think that he still can. And so I'm going to go for 3-0 is going to be my tip.
Yeah. Great. So, let's have a look at the table before we finish. So, if results go the way we think they're going to go, it's going to be still a 10-point lead with another week down for Leverkusen. Still unbeaten through 25 games, 36 it will be in all competitions, while the numbers just keep piling up for this Bayern 04 side. Actually, according to me, Dortmund will drop points, which could be huge as well, according to the table, because it means that Leipzig will climb above them, and building form as well. So that would be a concern for the Nordrhein-Westfaleners. Then moving down to the bottom, it will be, as it's been for pretty much the entire season, with that bottom 3. Although Köln would pick up a needed point, which should make them favourites to get the playoff spot ahead of Mainz and Darmstadt. Peter, any major differences on yours?
Well, the only result that we disagreed about was Dortmund. But of course, Dortmund, a win for them should be enough. I mean, it'll be enough for them to keep pace over Leipzig by 1 point. It gets to be the case that Leipzig are really racking up the goal differential, though. So it looks like Leipzig are favored over Dortmund at the moment in the top four. They're out of your top four. They're still in my top four. So that's the only difference that we have. I mean, you look for that relegation race. What's going to be interesting moving forward is which team gets the playoff spot, because obviously no team has won from the second division since Union Berlin did ahead of the 2019-20 campaign. So that was 2019. So the playoff spot could be huge. That could be that's going to be really entertaining. And even Darmstadt are still in contention for that, believe it or not. And then, of course, the Europa League race, which with Eintracht and Hoffenheim and maybe even Augsburg possible for the first time. The Weinzel this. Not great Europa League representatives for the Bundesliga just yet. All of them would have to be, really stock up in the summer, I think, to build better squads. But there's our prediction show for you. And there's Ballum.
Ballum, you were late, Ballum. Ballum predicts Dortmund to win this weekend.
All right.
But that's the big one, guys. The top spiel is our big disagreement this weekend. So let us know what you think about the top spiel between Werder Bremen and Borussia Dortmund this week. So let's have a look then. So basically, if you enjoyed what you saw today, then check out our X at @OverTheBarFB and at @OverTheBarExtra. Don't forget that we're not only a Bundesliga, we're not only a YouTube channel as well. So remember to check out our podcast, which you can find in the description for this show. And also don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Keep us going. We're continuing to build followers. We're building a great community here on the channel. So keep supporting us, keep recommending us to your friends. And Rory, we'll see you again tomorrow for the Fantasy Football Show. So see you then, guys. Bye-bye.